Today's lesson is on writing trigonometric equations from graphs. What is my learning objective? I can generate equations of trigonometric functions with all four parameter changes, previously called transformations on other functions, by working backwards from the graph. What are these parameter changes? In my equation A, sine of b times the quantity x minus c plus d, A is my amplitude. If there's a negative sign in front of it, I flip it over the x-axis. B is the number of cycles in 2 pi. I also have the relationship, the period is 2 pi divided by b. C is my phase shift, also known as a horizontal shift. And D is my vertical shift. Okay, so the process for generating these equations, I am first going to find the period by calculating the difference of one complete cycle, and I can do that several different ways. I can go peak to peak, so I can go from maximum to maximum or minimum to minimum, or 3 consecutive wave axis intercepts. After I find the period, I'm going to calculate b from the equation. B equals 2 pi divided by the period. I'm going to find my d parameter, that is the y equals the wave axis. So this is measured from the y-axis, from the x-axis. And then I'm going to determine what the amplitude is. So the amplitude is always positive. So it's measured from a minimum or a maximum to the wave axis. If there's a negative sign, that just means I am flipped. Okay, my C parameter is what determines if I have a sine wave or a cosine wave, and whether that sine wave is positive or negative, or that cosine is positive or negative. So if my C value for a positive sine wave, I am going to start on the wave axis, go to a maximum, go down to the minimum, and come back to the wave axis. So these would be my 5 defining points. For a minus sine wave, I again start on the wave axis, but this time I go to a minimum first and come up to a maximum and end on the wave. So these are my 5 defining points. When I have a cosine, I'm either starting on a maximum or a minimum. So for a positive cosine, I start at a maximum, come down to a minimum, and end at a maximum. So these are my 5 defining points. And for a minus cosine, I have this as a reflection. So I start at a minimum, come up to a maximum, and end at a minimum again. So I need to recognize these 4 graphs to know whether I am defining a sine wave or a cosine wave, and as if it's positive or negative. All right, so let's start out with, here I have a sinusoidal wave, and I'm going to write this sinusoidal wave as 5 different equations that represent this graph. Okay, so first in the process, I want to define what is the period. So the period is from peak to peak, or 3 wave axis intercepts in a row. So if I want to go peak to peak and go from maximum to maximum, this would be my period. So I am going from, this is like one complete cosine curve. So this is my period. So my period, the distance I go from the period is I'm going to go 11 minus 3 is 8. I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. And that's okay because I'm counting by ones, but I'm not always counting by ones on the x-axis. So make sure you are clear what one box represents. So from the period, then I calculate my b parameter, which is going to be 2 pi divided by the period. So 2 pi divided by 8. When I simplify my fraction, I get pi over 4 is my b parameter. Okay, next I want to find the wave axis. I find it helpful to draw a horizontal line for my maximum and my minimum, and my wave axis is going to be halfway between the maximum and the minimum. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. So 3 boxes up is the middle of my wave, called my wave axis. And my wave axis is at y equals 2 is my horizontal line. So I know my d parameter is 2. Next, I'm going to find my amplitude. My amplitude I can find from a maximum to the wave axis. So this is 1, 2, 3. I am counting by ones. So my amplitude is 3. I could also find that from a minimum to the wave axis. So I can see my amplitude in multiple places on this graph. So my amplitude is 3. B is pi over 4. That's the number of cycles in 2 pi. And D is 2. That's my vertical shift. So C is going to be my starting point. So I have 5 starting points defined here. A, B, C, D, and E. So starting from my A point, my C value is 1. So C is how far away am I from the y-axis? So C is 1. So when I'm starting here at point A, I'm on the wave axis going to a maximum. So this is the shape I have. So this is a positive sine wave. So now I'm going to substitute in all 4 of my variables. So I have f of x equals a is 3 times the sine. B is pi over 4. X minus c. C is 1. And D is plus 2. So D is 2. Okay, if I move over to point B, my C value is now 5. And I'm starting on the wave axis, and I'm going down to a minimum first. So the shape looks like this, which is a minus sine wave. So I'm going to write an equation representing point C as 5. So since I'm flipped, this is now going to be a negative 3 sine of pi over 4. And this time C is 5. So x minus 5 plus 2. Okay, if I come over to point C, I'm going to ask you to write the equation from point C. Can you pause the video, write your equation, and then come back and check? So C is 9. So I am starting on the wave axis. I'm going to a maximum. So my shape looks like this, which is a positive sine. So this is going to be f of x equals 3 times the sine pi over 4 x minus 9 plus 2. Okay, let's try at point D. At point D, my C value is 3. This time I'm starting at point D, I'm starting at a maximum, so my curve looks like this. So I know this is a positive cosine curve. So substituting into my equation, I get f of x equals 3 cosine. B is pi over 4. C is 3, so x minus 3, and D is still 2. All right, let's try a point E. At point E, my C value is -1. I am starting on a minimum, so my curve looks like this. So since I'm starting on a minimum, I have a minus cosine curve. So substituting in, so I have a negative sign because I'm flipped. So -3 cosine. B is still pi over 4. And x minus a -1 makes that x plus 1 plus 2. Okay, so the C value is what determines whether I have sine or cosine and whether I am flipped or not flipped. So let's take a look and make sure that we would know what kind of curve I'm going to write based on each point here. So we are going to label these points as a K, a M, a A, or a C. And depending on whether I'm going to write a positive sign, a negative sign, a positive cosine, or a negative cosine curve. Okay, so I just kind of like to start out with and kind of frame my wave. Here's my maximum, here's my minimum, and here's my wave axis. Okay, so if I'm starting here at this point, I'm on the wave axis, so I know I'm either a positive sign or negative sign. Since I'm going to a minimum first, this is going to be a minus sign, so I'm going to call this M. Can you label the rest of the points as a K, an M, an A, or a C? Okay, pause the video. Okay, so how did we do? This would be a minus cosine, a minus cosine. This would be a plus cosine and a plus cosine. This here would be a positive sign, a negative sign, a positive sign, and a negative sign. How'd you do? Okay, so let's do this all together, and I want you to talk me through all of this. Okay, so we are going to write 4 different equations, a positive sign, a negative sign, a positive cosine, and a negative cosine. I'm going to name where my C value is. Okay, so I'm going to start by, I want to find the period first. I like to kind of frame in my wave axis first. So here's my maximum, here's my minimum. I'm going to count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. So I know halfway. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is where my wave axis is. So this is that y equals -3. So I know my D value is -3. My period, if I go from peak to peak, I can go from peak to peak. I'm in the middle of a box. So whether I'm doing a maximum, a middle of the box to the middle of the box, or if I do a minimum, I'm the middle of the box to the middle of the box. Or I can count 3 wave axes in a row. So I'm going to do the 3 because that's right on the crosshairs. But I can do this several different ways. So here's a period. So here's one complete cycle. So if I count how many boxes I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is 10 boxes. And I have to figure out what one box is. So at this point, my period is 10 boxes. And I need to change units. If I count over here, if I look, I'm counting 1, 2, 3 boxes is pi over 2. So 3 boxes equals pi over 2. So if I want to know what one box is, I need to divide both sides by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. And this will be pi divided by 2. And I flip and multiply, right? So right now this is 3 over 1. So this is going to be times 1/3. So one box is pi over 6. So now I want to convert units. So one box is pi over 6. So 10 pi over 6. And simplified, that is 5 pi over 3. So this is my period. Okay, once I know my period, then I can calculate my B value. So B equals 2 pi divided by B, and we said B is 5 pi divided by 3. So I'm going to flip and multiply. So this is 2 pi. So this is going to be 3 divided by 5 pi. So I'm multiplying numerator times numerator, and pi divided by pi is 1. So numerator times numerator, 2 times 3 is 6, divided by 5 is my B parameter. So I have D is -3, B is 6 divided by 5. And then I'm going to find my amplitude. So my amplitude is going to be from the wave axis to either a maximum or a minimum. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm counting by 1. So my amplitude is 4. So now I can start substituting into my equation. Okay, when we are writing trig equations, to pick my C value, I am going to pick my closest value to the y-axis, whether that is to the left or to the right. And that's what we typically write as the standard equation. Okay. So let's, for a positive sign, so a positive sign is going to start on the wave axis and go to a maximum first. So the closest point I have is going to be here. So I'm going to call this point A. So my C value is 4 boxes, right? So this is C at this point. So each box is pi over 6. So this is going to be 4 pi over 6, which when I simplify, that's 2 pi over 3. So substituting into my equation, I get f of x equals, my amplitude is 4, sine, my b value is 6 over 5, and then pi minus c is 2 pi over 3, plus my d, which is -3. Okay, so my minus sign, so I'm going to be on the wave axis, and then the closest one that goes to a minimum first is this point. So I'm going to call this point B. So my C value is 1 box, but I'm to the left, so this is going to be minus pi over 6. So substituting into my equation, I get f of x equals minus 4 because I'm flipped, sine 6 over 5, and it's x minus negative pi over 6. So this is x plus pi over 6 minus 3. For a positive cosine curve, I would need to start at a maximum. So the closest point to the y-axis right here, I'm going to call this point C. So I am 1, 2, 3.5 boxes. So a whole box is, so pi over 6 times 3 halves, which is 7 halves, is going to be 7 pi over 12. All right, so substituting in my equation, I get f of x equals positive 4 cosine. B is still 6 over 5. X minus my C is 7 pi over 12 minus 3. Okay, so a minus cosine curve means I want to start on a minimum. The closest minimum I have to the y-axis is right here. So this is my D value. So this is 1.5. So again, this is pi over 6 times 1.5 is 3 halves. So this is going to be 3 pi over 12, which when I simplify that, it is pi over 4. So substituting in my equation, I get f of x equals, so it's flipped, so negative 4 cosine, b is still 6 over 5, x minus my c value is pi over 4 minus 3. Okay, so let's go on our drawing on the back one more time just to review where everything is and what it looks like. So if I have a sine wave, where is a period? I know a period. So again, I like to kind of just sketch in my maximum, my minimum, and my wave is halfway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my wave axis. So my period is from peak to peak. So here's my period. And I know my period is related to my b value. So my b is 2 pi divided by the period. So whatever I calculate the period to be. So my amplitude is going to be from the wave axis. Here's my amplitude. I guess I can just show it like that here. It can be shown from a minimum or a maximum to the wave axis. And then my C value is, where do I start? So on this particular one, if I want to start here, and here's my single wave, my C value would be here. So from here to here is my C value. So wherever I start, the X value is my C value. And then my D value is from the x-axis to the middle of the wave. So A is the amplitude, so that's going to be from a minimum or a maximum to the middle of the wave. B is going to be 2 pi divided by the period, so I can do peak to peak, max to max, min to min, or 3 wave axes in a row. And D is the horizontal line for the wave axis. Same thing for cosine. So again, my period is going to be from peak to peak. Most people try write maximum to maximum, but it's peak to peak. So period, so my period is 2 pi divided by b. I like to set up my minimum and my maximum. Just kind of frame it in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's my wave axis. Okay, so I'm going to show this as one cycle for a cosine. Okay, so my A value is from a minimum or a maximum to the wave axis. So I see this in multiple places on this graph. B, we said, is 2 pi divided by the period, and the period is 1 cycle from peak to peak. So maximum to maximum, minimum to minimum, or 3 wave axes in a row. My C value is where do I start? So if I'm starting here, this is my cycle here. This is my C value, and my D is from the x-axis down to the wave axis. So here is my D value. Okay, that should cover it.